What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. My name is Scott, and today we are talking about the most horrendous and the most useless shouts in all of Skyrim. When you're wandering the magnificent land of Skyrim as the fabled Dragonborn with the ability to perform grand shouts of power, you come across many dragon walls where you can learn more words of these shouts, but I guess not every word in the dragon language can be that crash hot, because some of them are pretty damn useless. Now, I'll concede that you can use some of the following list in certain situations or specific niche instances, but for the most part, 99.95% of the time, they are utterly useless, and on top of that, there are all the other shouts that prove far better. Just warning you so you don't get triggered when your favorite shout is on this list. Also, remember, I am not really considering the roleplay value, because remember, there are shitty statistical elements like tavern clothes that make great role-playing choices, if you know what I'm saying. So here's what we think are the most useless shouts available to you in Skyrim. Firstly, we have Aura Whisper. Now, Aura Whisper is a dragon shout that is essentially the Detect Life spell, plus it detects Dwarven automatons, undead, and Daedra. This shout may seem alright, but I guess this is just a personal opinion, but why do you need to use Detect Life anyways? Majority of the time, dungeons are quite linear, and you can expect there to be enemies around the corner, or if you're out in the wilderness, unless you're taking it slow and constantly using Aura Whisper to survey your surroundings, the enemies will be close enough to engage you, or far away enough that you don't really care, or I guess you could just use your eyes. It's not hard to spot a wolf in the plains of Whiterun. In my opinion, it's just one of those shouts that I never really use. I'd rather not use Aura Whisper to detect an enemy that I then engage, waiting on a cooldown, but rather use another shout at the start of combat, like Unrelenting Force, Ice Form, or Cyclone. Aura Whisper is just not my cup of tea, and is mostly useless in my opinion, which, in the same way, the Detect Life spell would be equally useless and overrated, which, by the way, costs 100 magicka a second, and then with Adept Alteration perk, it costs 50 magicka a second. Without heavy enchanting, it is such a waste of magic slinging potential. So there is our first useless shout on this list. What about the second? Next, we have Kind's Peace, which when used can calm all animals except frost trolls within a large area around the Dragonborn. Now, whilst this seems useful at face value, there are a few issues I have. Firstly, by the time you have gotten all the words of this shout, you'll probably be a pretty decent level, so if you can't handle some wolves, or a saber cat, or a bear, then you have some issues with your character build. Also, most animals are pretty weak. They aren't these super strong enemies that you come across, so really there is no reason that you need to use this shout to calm them all, unless for role-playing, or you really can't be asked drawing your sword and killing that wolf in 2 hits. You can see my point of view. The other thing is that Animal Allegiance does a very similar thing, except the animals will actually fight for you, so in my opinion there is no reason to use Kind's Peace instead. I'd rather have the wolves and animals of the wild come to help me fight the bandits, rather than chilling out like some 420 stoners. The next useless shout on our list is actually a shout which doesn't sound that bad at first, and it's called Dismay. This sends enemies within its radius running in terror, and with all 3 words you can affect almost all enemies up to the level that the master spell known as Hysteria allows. Hysteria is the Illusion Master Fear spell that affects enemies up to level 25, and Dismay causes enemies up to level 24 to flee for 30 seconds, and the area it affects is 93.75 feet. So why is this so bad? Isn't it a good thing that a non-illusion character like a warrior could benefit from a power similar to the Master Illusion spell without any magic investment? Well, here's the catch. Master level illusion spells suck, and the level of the enemies they affect is really low. In fact, by the time you collect all 3 words of this shout, you can be a higher level anyway, and you don't really benefit so much from it. Even when you're a mid-game character like level 30 or 40, you'll be taking out level 24 enemies, quick smart. So they really shouldn't be causing you too much trouble. This is actually why, when it comes to the Illusion School of Magic, you're much better off just dual casting expert spells. So anyways, the Dismay shout can be handy early on, but here at FudgeMuppet we look at the grand scale of things, and therefore we have to rate Dismay pretty low. Even if you wanted to use the shout strategically to do things like occupy several weaker enemies to make for a stronger opponent, you could just use another shout to quickly take care of them, like Stormcall or Unrelenting Force. Additionally, once you're high enough level, you won't encounter low level enemies as often, and when you do, you'll have an arsenal of techniques stemming from the core skills and perks of your build to effortlessly dispatch them. In a nutshell, it's useful early on if you go collect all the words really quickly, but then it rapidly becomes obsolete down the track. Next up, we've got a meme shout, but it wasn't as much of a meme as Unrelenting Force, and also wasn't nearly as good, introducing the throw voice shout. The purpose of the throw voice shout is to distract enemies. The Dragonborn projects their voice in a direction, and nearby hostile NPCs go to check out that area. The primary use of this shout is for a stealth build, but here's why we're not the biggest fans. Besides the cringy phrases you shout like, "Hey, skeever button," "Hey, cheese brain," the shout can very often cause enemies to detect you, which is the polar opposite of what you're trying to achieve. Therefore, to reduce your chances of detection greatly, you'll want to get the quiet casting perk from the illusion tree, as this actually affects it. This is a main problem with the shout, as it's only really useful for a very specific character, one that uses stealth and usually illusion magic as well, possessing the quiet casting perk. You can use it to make enemies gather in one area, making it easy to sneak past them. However, to do that, I say this: I've played Skyrim as a stealthy character many times, and not once have I needed to use this shout. I've always found that the sneak perks are more than good enough to get around unseen, and when I do happen to be using illusion as well as sneak and have the quiet casting shout, I also often have illusion spells such as pacify and invisibility, with perks to make you super silent and spells to literally make yourself invisible or calm everyone in the room down. You really have to ask yourself, is this shout worth using even for the specific character build it would suit in the first place? I would say it's not. As you'd imagine, it also doesn't fool enemies who have already seen you, and it doesn't distract passive NPCs. You can do fun things with the shout, like cause enemies to wander into the traps, but it's far more effective to actually use your stealth skills to shoot them with an arrow or take them out from behind with a dagger. And speaking of arrows, you can even fire arrows to certain points to distract enemies that will go over to that arrow and check out the area, basically rendering the throw voice shout useless. In summary, the shout earns a spot on this list for being an absolute novelty, which you never really need. Finally, we have a shout so useless that it should be criminal in all the holds: the Clear Skies shout. Quite simply, the reason this shout was even implemented into the game was so the Greybeards can teach it to you, so you can then disperse some fog during a main quest climbing High Hrothgar. And basically, its only other function is turning a rainy day into a sunny day, and unless you're running to Skyrim's renowned beaches because the surf's up, who cares? For real, its one niche use that I think is actually practical is clearing the sky to use Auriel's bow to shoot the sun for that awesome sun damage burst stuff out of the sky, but besides that, it's not that fantastic. You may argue that it's useful for taking screenshots. Sure, you can, or you could just be on a PC and use console commands to make the weather perfect, and also utilize FreeCam for good shots. No one is really using a console to take epic screenshots because the lack of FreeCam, so this shout isn't even useful here. Overall, this shout is useless 99.95% of the time, though then again, if you really need to praise the sun on a daily basis, then you can use it to send those stormy clouds away, but not in Winterhold and not in Solstheim, because it doesn't really work there, because reasons. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, those are what we think are the most useless shouts in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. What do you guys think about it all? Do you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Just saying though, you can't go listing niche uses to qualify the shout as not useless. 99.95% useless. Anyways, my name was Scott. Check us out on all the social media links that are in the description below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, comment below, and I will be back to nerd out with you again next time.